Great. Yeah, thanks. Thanks everyone for being here again. Yeah, so today I am a core contributor to Moonbeam as a developer relations person, but I'm also an advisor for TANSSI, so that's why I'm speaking in front of you guys today. Sadly, Francisco could not make it to Paris, and so I'm taking sort of the step in behalf of him. So I'm going to talk to you about TANSSI and pioneering and empowering rapid developer adoption on Polkadot, right? So before we sort of TANSSI, it's an infrastructure protocol on top of Polkadot. But before we get to TANSSI, let's talk about what problem is TANSSI trying to solve. And so, TANSSI is funded. It was created by some core Moonbeam team members that actually spun out to their own project, TANSSI Network, and they sort of in the process of building Moonbeam, they sort of saw a lot of friction points and a sort of pains that developers were actually having while trying to onboard to blockchain, right? And so TANSSI is trying to sort of onboard the new sort of set of blockchain technologies that will be powered by Polkadot, and these are called app chains. In the context of TANSSI, we'll name them container chains. But so why developers want app chain? That it's a fact. Okay, so if you see this graph right here, we have time, and this is just illustrative, and then we have number of blockchains. You would see that the growth that app chains have seen in the past years have been amazing, right? We've seen 10x growth since 2020. And one of the core reasons why this is like that is because building a blockchain nowadays, it's easy. I mean, back then you had Ethereum, you had Bitcoin. It was really complicated to build a blockchain from scratch. You had to do so much stuff, not only the code, but also the consensus, the networking layer, and so on. And nowadays, it's very easy because you have things like the Cosmos SDK, substrate for Polkadot-based blockchains. You have the OP stack. And so you can actually build your own blockchain in a matter of minutes or hours. And so the point of entry or the barrier of entry to create a new blockchain has diminished, basically. And so beforehand, it was really hard to think, oh crap, I have to do my own app chain. And nowadays, it's a breeze to do it. And so we've seen anchor projects on Ethereum, for example, like DYDX, that they've decided to move away from Ethereum and to build, for example, a Cosmos-based, Cosmos SDK-based chain. And this is because they want customization and cost control of their environment that they're actually executing on, right? So I really like this graph because it shows that we've seen an immense growth in app chains in the blockchain ecosystem. And so yeah, I mean it's great. I mean we've seen that there's over 120 app chains if you account for Avalanche subnets, Cosmos, and Polkadot. But the question is now why? Why do we need app chains, right? And so basically we can sort of divide this answer into three segments. And so the first one is that, as I mentioned before, with app chains, you have complete platform control and customization. You can create your own runtime that is very optimized to do things very efficiently, right? So if let's say you want to create an app chain around a specific niche, you can optimize your blockchain for that niche, right? You don't have to sort of adapt to the environment that Ethereum or Moonbeam or any smart contract platform is offering. If you want to develop an app via smart contracts, you need to adapt. In this case, you adapt the runtime or the blockchain to your needs. And so this creates a lot of you can control a lot of the different components. You can add things, for example, like governance. You will have the block space entire for your application, right? In a sort of the shared environment like Ethereum, you need to share block space with other apps that exist on Ethereum. The second component is around superior UX through vertical integrations, right? And this goes also hand in hand with the first component because you will have your own custom runtime that is specific to this niche, this application that you're building. And so you will be able to sort of basically provide a very unified UX to the end user through a nice UI because everything will feel embedded, right? You will see that you can, for example, a great example is Osmosis, which is a Cosmos SDK-based chain. And they've sort of integrated a lot of components like gasless transactions, or you can pay transactions with any tokens that you want. You have integrated wallets and things like that. In the case of Polkadot, you see things like, for example, frequency that presented 30 minutes ago, in which they created this gasless or transaction fee-less environment and so on. Or in the case of Moonbeam, right? Moonbeam was completely optimized to be the Ethereum compatible blockchain of Polkadot and so on. And so this level of customization is only possible in app chains and so on. Last but not least is decentralization and token utility, right? So the TANSSI team, speaking with a lot of teams, they've kind of realized that decentralization for them is key. And so having your own app chain with your own token basically boosts the token utility because you can have on-chain governance, you can have staking features, you can use a token to pay transaction fees natively. I mean, I think everyone here has this issue where has had this issue where you're on Ethereum, right, and you're interacting with protocol X, but you got to pay the transaction fees with ETH. And so in an app chain, this is not true. Let's say you're building an app chain for a game, you can actually like pay the transaction fees in the game token and things like that. And so I think these three components are kind of related to each other, right? But they're separate components by themselves. And so one clear sort of like demonstration of decentralization was Moonbeam as well, right? And Moonbeam has an entire on-chain governance set of governance tools like Polkadot, right, which allows them to be completely self-sovereign, and you get things like forkless upgrades and things like that. And so, okay, Alberto, app chains are great. I've sold you the point that app chains are amazing. Everyone should be doing app chains. Why don't we see like a million app chains, and why is still, it's a very limited number of app chains out there? And so app chains, building app chains have a lot of challenges. It's not as easy as I was making it sound, right? And so if we summarize these challenges, we can divide them sort of into 4 different layers. The first one, for me, at least in my opinion, is the most important one, is that, when you build an app chain, there's a lot of complex infrastructure management that you need to do, right? You have block explorers that you need to integrate with. You have wallets, you have RPC endpoints, you have oracles, you have bridges. And so basically imagine that you have 120 app chains out there. Each of their teams had to deal with a block explorer, how to find one, RPC providers, oracles, and all these things that I've mentioned in the past, right? So this is just basically not scalable if you want to bring 1,000 app chains and so on. And so this becomes really time consuming and really resource consuming to onboard a new app chain. And that's something that drives away a lot of teams when they're developing, right? If you think about it the other way, right, when you go to Moonbeam or you go to Ethereum, all those infrastructure complexities are completely abstracted to the developers. So there's a pro in that, but then the con is that you have to adapt to that environment. While on app chains like this, it's beneficial because you have your own blockchain, but then you have to deal with other things. The second point is about security and basically, inefficient set of security validators and so on. When you're building an app chain from scratch, let's say you put a proof of stake model on top of your app chain. Because you're starting, right, you're not going to have a lot of security guarantees. You might need to have a low number of validators, or for example, right, you might need to pay for full blockchain capacity, while you still might just use a percentage of it. We see a lot of app chains that have basically empty blocks being produced over and over, but you're actually paying for that because you need to have a full set of decentralized validators and so on. And so this is where actually Polkadot benefits the app chain world, because they have this pay-as-you-go model, right? And in the sense that if you don't need to produce a block because it's empty, you don't have to pay for it, basically. The third step is about cross-chain and bridge implementations. And this is also related to the first one because it's an infrastructure problem, but it's big enough by itself that it's like a separate layer. So we're going to have a lot of app chains out there, right? Right now we have over 120. And so if you believe in the multi-chain world, that multi-chain world will need to be cross-chain, right? These app chains will need to speak with each other, because if not, they'll just be isolated things that are by themselves sovereign, but they don't coexist with others, right? And so if you build an app chain and you need to cross-connect it, then you have to deal also with the bridging implementation, that it's not easy to do. And so that's another major deal breaker, and that's why a lot of the devs end up going to the blockchains that we all know nowadays. And then this all adds up to the last point, which is a slow time to market, user experience, and adoption, right? If you need to build an app chain yourself and you need to deal with everything that I've just mentioned, you'll have a really slow time to market. It's going to be really resource intensive, and so it's just going to create a lot of problems, right? And so these are the main components that this drives away developers that are trying to build app chains. And so now we have sort of like the solution, right? So it's cool because we talked about the problem, we introduced app chains, and now this is like the solution to that problem. And yeah, this is TANSSI basically. TANSSI, the whole idea is app chain development made easy. So it's like a perfect blend of like app chains and smart contracts with the ease of like smart contract deployments. And so with TANSSI, you'll have a sort of like things out of the box. Like when you create your own app chain, you will have things that are going to be there out of the box with your app chain deployment. Things like, for example, block production as a service. You don't have to worry about who's going to be my miners in the Ethereum 1.0 world or collators in the Polkadot world. You don't have to worry about data retrievability or cross-chain communication. You'll have a really nice chain management tool. You'll have integrations out of the box, wallets, RPC providers, all the things that I mentioned before, they will be there out of the box. And then TANSSI is also substrate based, meaning that the TANSSI itself was customized or is being customized to adapt to this needs, to the solution that TANSSI is trying to solve. So yeah, and TANSSI, by the way, will be a parachain on the Polkadot ecosystem. And briefly, just to describe TANSSI from a technical perspective, you will see here the Polkadot landscape where you have Polkadot as a relay chain with XCM, you have the parachain cores and multiple parachains coexisting, and then you have TANSSI as a parachain itself. TANSSI will have a set of coallators or block producers outside of the Polkadot terminology. And basically what will happen is that in a trustless and decentralized way, because all these components actually coexist with the relay chain, through the relay chain, TANSSI can sort of orchestrate basically the who's going to produce blocks on the other parachains, right? And this is completely decentralized and trustless, which is really cool. And so basically what would happen if that, and in the concept of TANSSI, these are called container chains, because if you're familiar with Docker and Kubernetes, it's like orchestration of like containers and things like that. And so TANSSI will be able to, in a decentralized way, to say, okay, collator A and collator B, you're going to produce blocks for the parachain X or parathread B and so on. And then we'll also have another layer that is going to be the TANSSI data preservers, which is going to be like RPC endpoints that are going to be available to the app chains or container chains so that apps and users can interact with them. And this is really cool. And I think like a couple of weeks ago, or like a week ago, the TANSSI team actually deployed a testnet internally where we had all these like different app chains running, you know, with collators being assigned in a decentralized way and so on. And these collators will be incentivized by basically TANSSI tokenomics. So this slide is really cool because it summarizes a very, very important point that developers will only have to care about the logic of their blockchain, okay? So they won't have to care about integrations, like I've said before, security, and a lot of things. If you want to build a blockchain about, this is an example that I always give for whatever reason, I want to build a blockchain for uploading pictures of pets, right? I'm going to focus on the logic that allows me to do that, but I don't have to think who's going to be my RPC provider. How am I going to get security? Oh, I need oracles to do that. I don't have to worry about that. That's going to be given to the app chain developer as a service by TANSSI. And so that's why like the first point is super highlighted that, you know, developers only need to be responsible for the code of their blockchain. If they don't want to be responsible for it because they are busy doing something else, for example, developing smart contracts, TANSSI will provide a set of templates or like parachain templates or pay-as-you-go parachain templates that they can use. Okay, so for example, one really popular one is the EVM one. Let's say you want to have your own little moonbeam for you because you are a smart contract developer and you have your set of smart contracts, but you don't want to sort of like, you know, develop something in Rust and Substrate. And so basically you can grab the EVM template and now you have your own little like moonbeam app chain running that you can deploy your smart contracts to, but that app chain is running your token natively as the governance token, the transaction fee token, and so on, which is really powerful. We'll also provide, or the TANSSI team will also provide other templates if you don't want an EVM template, like a basic parachain template and so on. Then, like I've said before, key integrations will be provided by TANSSI, like bridges, through ecosystem projects as well, right? So for example, let's say that you want to have a connection with Wormhole or Axelar, you know, TANSSI can provide a bridging capabilities through Moonbeam, for example, right? RPC providers, wallets, everything that I've mentioned before will be provided for you. In my opinion, one thing that I really envision is that, you know, like when you're building your own app chain, you will have like a shopping cart and you would say, I want to build my app chain with this code. I want to add to the cart RPC providers, wallets, oracles, bridges, explorers, and then you like check out. It's like when you're building your own like virtual machine with the OVH and things like that. I mean, hopefully that would be really cool. And last but not least, because it's probably the most important, is the security side of things, right? TANSSI will provide settlement, availability, and execution through Polkadot, right? I mean, we know that Polkadot provides the security side of things. TANSSI would provide the data availability, but also the block producing mechanisms, which is super important to maintain the app chain alive. And so hopefully by now it is clear that all that developers need to focus on is step number one. Everything else will be provided by TANSSI through services. And yeah, I mean, this summarizes a little bit of the TANSSI ecosystem. I mean, the team is pretty new, and so this is still growing, but there has been a lot of interest in the community to build app chains. I think the vPro guys were just before me, they might actually benefit from having an app chain. I was speaking with Marin as well, and he was like, yeah, I mean, maybe an app chain is a good solution. So we have projects like Remark, which is pretty popular in the Polkadot ecosystem, Kawa, which is like Prime Protocol, but they do cross-chain aggregation, which is pretty cool. And then Leverify as well. We've talked with the multiple block explorers, RPC endpoints, oracles, indexers, and so on, so that they can provide their solution as out of the box, like we've mentioned before. And this is really important, right? Because there are other sort of app chain environments out there. And so the idea is to understand what are the limitations of each. So, you have, for example, in the y-axis, decentralization, and in the x-axis, effort, basically, right? And you can see, for example, that Polkadot is great because it's super decentralized, but we're a parachain team. It's really hard. It's not straightforward, right? There are multiple components that you need to work with, crowd loans, slots, making sure that everything is working. Then you have the customization side of things. Then you have Avalanche subnets and Polygon supernets and the OP stack, which probably are not that hard to get started with, but then you have this centralization part, which is not great for a lot of teams, right? You got to commit somewhere. And so you got to make commitments. And so basically TANSSI is sort of trying to solve all the problems that are summarized in the slides by providing high security, full decentralization, and try to minimize the effort that you have to put to create your own app chain. And yeah, so I mean, how this benefits the .sama ecosystem, if you think about it, Polkadot's idea was about having multiple parachains that coexist in a rich ecosystem, right? But if it's really hard to get started, that's not going to be a thing. And so the idea of TANSSI is that it will help accelerate the growth of Polkadot by making it easy for developers to onboard new app chains and new parachains and so on. So I think that that's crucial for the growth of Polkadot and the whole .sama ecosystem. And yeah, like I've mentioned before, TANSSI targets market challenges by making sure that app chain development is easy. And we're leveraging Polkadot's architecture for shared security, which is crucial if you want to create app chains, right? A lot of, for example, the OP stack app chains are leveraging Ethereum security, but this creates problems because you need like finality in 2 minutes and so on. And so especially we're trying to address weak inefficiencies in terms of security, the heavy infra lift, and the slow time to market. And yeah, I mean, to summarize, there are a couple of things that are really cool that are happening right now. You can join the waitlist of the App Chain Pioneers programs. These are early builders that want to build their own app chain and want to get into TANSSI kind of early. There are some benefits of joining the program. For example, mentoring, educational materials, networking opportunities, and so on. So you can see here the waitlist if you want to join. It's tansssi.network, the website. And then we also, I think the ambassador program was launched like a couple of weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. So if you want to be an ambassador, early, you want to be an ambassador of the TANSSI ambassador program, make sure you scan the QR code or go into the website if you want to join. So yeah, I think that's it. I think I made it in time. Yeah, please join early. The community of TANSSI. These are the Twitter handle, the website, the Telegram, the GitHub, and the Discord if you want to join the community. A lot of things are happening at TANSSI, to be honest. It's really cool. They're a really cool team, and I'm an advisor, so I work closely with them as well. And so yeah, I mean, I'll be around if you have any other questions, but yeah, thanks a lot for attending.